Hey everyone, I'm Tristan Wade for mypokercoaching.com, and I'm here to help you learn how to play Texas Hold'em and crush the competition. Now, this little video is going to be about some of the more basic things about No Limit Hold'em, but it should still be helpful if you're new to the game, and you'll find a lot of value out of it regardless. So yeah, let's get right into it. Texas Hold'em is the most popular poker variant. You start with 2 cards, and there's 5 community cards, and there's 4 different rounds of betting. And we'll get into the details of this, but there's a lot of variables that we use to make decisions in poker. So I'm going to discuss some of the basics, and then I'll try to get into some of the advanced concepts as well. So first things first, we are going to go over the hand rankings. And if you're new to poker, you need to know the hand rankings because this tells you what beats what. So when you combine your 2 cards with the 5 community cards, you try to make your best 5-card hand. So sometimes you have a choice of up to 7 cards to pick from, but you usually know which card you're using by the time more community cards come, because you're already starting to make your hand when you start with your first 2 and then the first 3 that come for the community cards. But regardless of all that, these are the official poker hand rankings. The strongest hand you can make is a royal flush. That's 10, jack, queen, king, ace, all of the same suit. If you have that hand, you cannot be beaten. It's impossible unless you're playing with a joker in the deck or something, which doesn't happen. So a royal flush is the best hand you can make. Next to that is a straight flush. The concept is similar, but it's not the highest value cards. So a straight flush is 5 cards in consecutive order that are all the same suit that aren't Broadway, that aren't the royal flush. Broadway is the highest straight you can make, and that's what a royal flush is. A straight, the highest straight you can make along with the highest flush you can make. So straight flushes are like our example, the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of clubs. Pretty self-explanatory there. 4 of a kind, similar, right? You get 4 of your cards are the same, and then you play a kicker. Now, your kicker's not really going to matter when you have 4 of a kind, because 4 of a kind is really going to be unbeatable unless there's another 4 of a kind on the board. And like I said, kicker won't play in those situations. After that, we have a full house, which is 3 cards that are paired. We call that a set, or we call that trips, and that's going to be combined with a pair. So you take 3 and then you take 2, and that combines to make a full house. Those are really strong hands. If you make a full house in No Limit Hold'em, you're typically going to have the best hand, although there are some instances where you got to be a little concerned. Flush is 5 of all the same suit. Flushes is going to be ranked by the highest card. So let's say I have ace deuce of clubs and my opponent has jack 9 of clubs, and there's 3 clubs that come on the community board. Well, my ace high flush is going to beat their jack high flush. A straight is 5 cards in consecutive order. In our example, we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but you can make a straight in many different ways. And remember, the ace can be the high and the low of a straight. So the high of a straight would be 10, jack, queen, king, ace. That's the highest possible straight you can make. And then on the bottom end of that, the lowest straight you can make is ace, 2, 3, 4, 5. We call that the wheel. So straights are a thing, and it's very important to know how strong your straight is if you do make a straight. After that, we have 3 of a kind. 3 of a kind is a pretty strong hand as well. Sometimes you might hit 2 of your card on the board and have 1 card in the hole, and that's how you make your 3 of a kind. That's not that deceptive. If you have a pair in your hand and then you hit your pair connects with the board, then that can be a really deceptive 3 of a kind, and that can make you a lot of money because your hand is pretty disguised in that capacity. After 3 of a kind, we have 2 pair. Pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, you have 2 card values that match up that are both pairs. Nothing more to be said there. And then we have 1 pair, and then we have high card. And just remember, when you play 5-card holdings. So like a flush, you're typically using 5 cards. When you have a straight, you're typically using 5 cards, right? You have to have qualifying 5 cards. When it comes to 3 of a kind, 2 pair, 1 pair, and then high card, you're not technically qualifying with all those cards. So that's when a kicker comes into play, and then you need to be aware of your kicker. So let's say I have a pair of aces with a king 10-9 kicker, and you have a pair of aces with the queen jack 4 kicker. Well, my king is going to trump your queen, and we call that a kicker. So if you're not playing all 5 cards to make a value hand, then beware of your supporting cards, your side cards, because your next highest card is going to be what qualifies you for a winning hand or not if your opponent has a similar hand. So yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. And here we get into the positions in Texas Hold'em. Now this is very important. We use different variables to make decisions when we play a game as intricate as Texas Hold'em. And position at the table is really one of the things that helps us make decisions, because we utilize where our opponent sits and how many people they are playing into to distinguish what hands they can actually be playing. So if you look at this, we start with the dealer. The dealer has the little D puck in front of them, and that's also known as the button. That's going to be the person that has the best position after the flop, and we'll get into what all the terminology is in the next slide. But this is just the basics to explain the positions. But the dealer basically has the best position after the flop, after we go through the first round of betting, when everyone gets their first 2 cards. And the reason that is they get to act last. So they have position, they get to act last, and they get to see what everyone does first. Now, in this example, we have the small blind and the big blind, along with under the gun +1, under the gun +2. We have then low jack, high jack, cutoff, and the button. And basically what we did throughout the years playing poker, we said, hey, we got to give these positions names, because I need to know, if I'm going to tell someone what happened, I need to know exactly what happened. So we have different kind of terminology to use with this. You might say under the gun 9, meaning that you're at a 9-handed table, or under the gun 8, meaning that there's 8 people left in the hand when it's on you, or even under the gun 7, which would be the under the gun +2 player. And as you can see, there's only 2, 4, 6, 7 players left when it's under the gun +2. And then when we get to MP, which is middle position, we've kind of advanced a little past that. And now we just call, when there's 6 people left in a hand, we call that player the low jack. When there's 5 people left, that's the high jack. And then to the right of the button is the cutoff. And then we have the button, the small blind, and the big blind. So those are the positions. And you should play different starting hands in different positions, because you have to worry about how many people are left behind you. You have to worry about who might have position on you. You have to worry about stack sizes and different things like that. So just covering the basics so far, but hopefully you're following, hopefully you understand. All right, so when we get into the blinds and antes, as you saw in the last slide, we had a small blind and a big blind. And what those do is those are forced bets to ensure action. And that means that there's always something to win in the pot. So the person to the left of the button is always going to be the small blind. The person to the left of the small blind is always going to be the big blind. And then after that hand completes, the dealer button moves to the left, and the person who was a small blind is now the dealer, the button. And the person who was the big blind is the small blind. The person who's under the gun is now in the big blind. So after every hand, the positions just shift. And after 9 hands, we play a whole orbit, we call it. And everyone has got to play every position. So that ensures a fair game, but it also ensures that there's money to be made, and every player is putting in the same amount of money to be made involuntarily while they play. Each player or one player may put in an additional ante. There are games where there are antes involved, and that really happens in tournaments usually. Tournaments like to involve an ante because it speeds the pace of the game up a little bit, and it ensures that the event is going to finish a little bit quicker if there wasn't an ante, because there's more money to be won. So basically just an ante creates a bigger pot, and it adds more value to try to win those chips in the middle. And then in a cash game, players often start with 100 big blinds. We like to gauge stack sizes in big blinds. And yeah, typical big stack cash game, you'll have 100 big blinds. So if you play blinds of $1, $2 at a casino, you might sit with $200. That's pretty standard. All right, moving on to the rounds of betting. This is where poker gets so complex and so cool. It's really interesting, but there's 4 different rounds of betting. So the first round of betting is pre-flop, and that's before the cards are dealt, or before the flop is dealt, excuse me. So everyone gets 2 cards, face down. Nobody knows what anyone has. And this is the part of the incomplete information that we get when we play poker. You have to decipher what someone has in their holding. So the first information you get is what do they do in that first round of betting. So that's pre-flop. That's before any community cards come. There's a round of betting. And then after that round of betting, we get to see the flop. And the flop is the first 3 community cards. So there's a round of betting. So I also should note that just back here real quick to this slide, under the gun is going to act first, right? Under the gun acts first, and the big blind acts last, unless there's some other action like a re-raise or anything. So the big blind gets the most information usually before the flop, because they put the most money in involuntarily before the flop, and they get to go last. But then after the flop, the small blind has to go first, or the big blind has to go first. It's whoever's to the left of the button goes first. So there is some nuance there with getting information and trying to decipher what people might have, right? All right, so the flop, first 3 community cards. So that means pre-flop, we made our betting. Now the flop comes, and that's where we get to see the cards, and there's now another round of betting. The 4th community card is the turn. So after we see 3 and there's a round of betting, then we get to go to the turn, and that's when another round of betting comes. And then after that round, we have one more round of betting on the river. We see the 5th and final community card. So now you have 5 cards on the community card to pair with your 2 in your hand, and hopefully you have something pretty strong at that point because you've been maybe wagering chips or what have you. And then after the 5th and final betting round on the river, we have what's called showdown. And showdown means, hey, we've gotten to the end. I've either called your bet or we've both checked, and we decide to just get to showdown and see who's got the best hand. And that's basically when we turn our cards up and we see who has the best of it. So we see who makes the best hand. And, the cool thing about showdown is if you're inexperienced and you're not really 100% sure, like, oh, what do I have? Am I sure I'm good? You can always just turn over your hand. There's a dealer usually at the table. And once a hand is tabled, once a hand is turned up in a showdown, as long as it's visible and it's readable, you will be pushed the pot if you have the best hand. The dealer will help you. So yeah, showdown is basically when we get to award the best hand the pot. And that's pretty cool feeling when you do win those pots at showdown. Other popular Texas Hold'em variants that we see, one I mentioned, multi-table tournaments. That means we have a lot of people playing different tables, there's usually a buy-in that happens in a multi-table tournament, and then the casino takes a fee out of that buy-in called a rake. But those multi-table tournaments get 100, 200, thousands of people, and that's the ones you see in the big WSOP, WPT. You might go to your local card room and see a tournament going with 10 different tables. That's what's called a multi-table tournament. It's basically an event where they pay the top 15% usually, and the closer you come to number 1, the more money you make. And if you just come in the top 15%, usually about double your money. But 85% of the people are just losers. They don't win anything because the goal of a tournament is to survive till the end and win and be the last person standing. And then after that, we have sit and go tournaments, which usually are just one table. Sit and goes are usually one table, but sometimes they're capped, like 45-person sit and goes or 90-person sit and goes. But a sit and go is just a little bit different because that's usually like a one table thing. You play against 9 or 10 people, and then maybe the top 3 get paid. with first getting the most, second getting second most, third getting the third most. And yeah, just a little not as wild of a style, not as long of a game, more of a single table type thing. And then we have jackpot sit and go tournaments. Those are a little nuanced. Those are a little more gambly, right? Anything that's going to have jackpot in the gambling world is going to have not the greatest edge, I would say. But these tournaments are more so fast paced. And then if you win, I believe in these, you just get to spin for a jackpot. So you might play like a $10 jackpot sit and go. And maybe you can win $1,000 jackpot or a $10,000 jackpot. Now that might not be statistically probable, but the chance is there, So that can be a little interesting of a gamble. That can be a little exciting, and those are pretty fast-paced games, just by nature. And then one of my favorite variants is cash games. And the difference between a tournament and a cash game is a tournament you have to play till the end. You can't just get up and leave. A cash game, you get to sit with real money, and then you get to decide how you want to play. The blinds never change. The structure never changes. In multi-table tournaments, the structure continues to increase. The blinds continue to increase. Every so many minutes, the tournament director says, okay, we have a new level now. The blinds are going to go up. And what that does is force action. In cash games, you don't have to worry about that. The blinds are just what they are. If you lose, you can put more money on the table and rebuy. If you just want to leave after you win a hand, you can. It's a lot more relaxed of environment, and it's a lot less of an intense kind of environment. I guess I'm saying the same thing there, but a cash game, you just have more flexibility, and there's no finality to it. Once you're out of a multi-table tournament, you're usually out. You can't do anything about it. Maybe you can re-enter, but still, the nature of the game is there's winners and there's losers. Cash game is more of a running cycle thing, and there's a lot of freedom to it. So I really like that. And then we have fast fold cash games, which are mostly just turbo cash games that are played online, where we try to play very fast, we try to play a lot of hands, and we can just move from one table to the next instantly when we make our decision. And that's kind of rare because you usually have to wait your turn to make your decision when you play poker. But in fast fold cash games, if you know you're just going to pass, then you get to go, and then you get to go to the next table and get to go to the next hand. So that can also be a good learning tool and an exciting way to play poker if you so choose. And I mean, hey, if you're here, you care about poker, you want to learn about poker, you got to understand this. Play within your means and your skill, right? If you're just starting to learn, start off small. There's 3 exclamation points there for a reason. Start off small. Poker is a game that you can wager money on, that you can bet on yourself, but you can also lose money in poker too. You have to be careful. You have to be considerate. You have to be cautious. You have to know what you're doing. So if you're just going to start playing poker, I suggest start small, understand the game, and then try to build up your experience and maybe move up if you can, and so choose fit. If you have not practiced or studied much, just understand that you're not excellent at poker, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. And then once you understand that you are a winning player and you have been successful, then you can start to dabble and try to move up in stakes, we call that. We have a quote here: poker is a great way to get rich slowly. And that is true. That is true. You definitely can make a lot of money playing poker, but you have to be smart, you have to be cautious, and you have to be willing to take risks. Poker is a lot about risk management, risk aversion, money management, calculated decision making. So it's possible to make good money in poker, but it's also possible to blow through money and lose money and make bad decisions and get emotional and get on tilt and dust off a lot of money that you shouldn't have. So you really got to understand the game, understand the nuance between it, understand that there's a lot of variance, luck, it can go up and down, and then make sure that you can afford to play. Make sure that you're within your means when you do play. And that's really a really strong emphasis I want to make on that, because I love poker. I love it so much. It's such a great game. It's done so much for me. But you have to understand the nature of the beast. So I appreciate you guys joining me, Tristan Wade from mypokercoaching.com, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and write some comments on what you want to see from us next. Thanks.